This is my late father, Charles Weller, and this is his story. In April of 2019, my father had a stent placed in his heart. A few months later, my father, at 70, who was a lifelong smoker, it turned out he had spots on his lung. So obviously, me having lost my mother and his wife in 2013 of cancer, we were very scared. My father was scheduled to have a biopsy done, which would determine how far the cancer had got, which stage it was in, all of those very, very important details. This was in July of 2019. My father was complaining at the time of very serious pain in his lower back as well. So my father went in, they did all kinds of x-rays. They said, perhaps you have a leak in your stent. So they did a specific x-ray on his stent. They said, nah, your stent's good. Maybe you're just sleeping on it wrong. We'll figure it out. So he gets discharged from the hospital. Turns out he had sciatica, okay? So just a few short weeks later, just about 2 weeks later, we go in after the biopsy, and it turns out that my father's cancer is in a small part of his lung that can be removed. This is the exact picture that was drawn for me in the office. As we're rejoicing over this, the doctor says, but, they kind of want to go in and look at that stent real quick, just a routine procedure, you know what I mean? And he'll be in and out in 24 hours, kind of like checking the plumbing. And we were so ecstatic about the news of the cancer being able to be removed that we kind of were just like, okay, but we're like, didn't they just x-ray about that 2 weeks ago? Yeah, but they just kind of want to check stuff out. He'll come in, he'll be done with 24 hours. A few days later, my father goes in, has a procedure done. At the end of the procedure, they're like, turns out there's nothing wrong with the stent at all. So yeah, he's good. So me and my brother just go, so he was opened up for no real reason. Yeah, we just wanted to check. Within 24 hours, my father became very sick. He had diarrhea. He had no appetite. We had to take him back to the hospital, a place that my father admittedly hated. For 9 days, my father was in this hospital room with a revolving door of nurses. And every day, the daily plan that they write on that whiteboard was the same. If the patient starts to eat, he can be able to go home. Because we'd be like, when can my dad go home? He came in here, on 2 feet, walking. Like, we get it. He's not the most healthy 7-year-old, but he's a pretty active 70-year-old. So, when can he go home? So they started to basically spin it like he's being grumpy, as soon as he starts to eat. And every day, the daily plan would be the same. And I'm like, how are these people making this much money and the daily plan is just like he needs to eat and then go home? They're running tests. He's getting negative cultures. And it occurred to me on maybe the 8th day, why am I spoon-feeding applesauce to my dad like a baby? Something's wrong. I go to visit him on the 10th day, and all of a sudden they're moving him down to the ICU now. So I'm talking to this nurse, like, why is my dad getting moved to the ICU? She said, well, it looks like he might have a little bit of pancreatitis. I have no idea what pancreatitis is at the time. The only thing I've ever heard of was pancreatic cancer, and that was terrible. Pancreatitis, what's that? Well, basically we just got to get him fluids to bypass the pancreas, and we kind of just want him down there because he'll have more nurses working with him directly. I'm like, okay, all right. 2 days into the ICU trip, he has a breathing episode. They call me in the middle of the night. Yeah, he kind of had a breathing episode, so we're monitoring him. What's a breathing episode? Well, he kind of was struggling to breathe in the middle. What is happening? 3 days into the ICU trip, my father and me were sitting on the bed, and I had probably the last meaningful conversation I'd ever have with my father. The man just had a new lease on life. He said, son, I just want to be out of here. I haven't smoked a cigarette, and I'm never going to smoke again. I'm going to turn my life. I'm going to completely get it together. I just need to be out of this bed. I just want to go home. And when I turned to the doctor, which again, down in the ICU, was just, I saw so many different doctors. She was probably the first person to be honest with me. I said, hey, will my dad, do you think, be able to go home by this weekend? Or what? She said, son, your father's sick. That's why he's down here. He's very sick. There was also a nurse that worked in the ICU that I knew, a good friend of mine I knew from years past, and I can't reveal their name. But the nurse said to me, he said, listen, man, there's something up with how your dad came down and everything. Something's not right. My father had another breathing episode. And so they put a mask on him. And my father was kind of out of it for the most part. I had the idea I was going to bring in my son to maybe cheer him up. And sadly, that is the day that they had to intubate my dad. And he was fighting like he did not want to be intubated. But he had another breathing episode and he just wasn't breathing on his own. And we still, this is about 15, 16 days in, had no idea what the hell had gone on. Now the fluids they were giving him weren't draining right. So now they had to give him a womb vac. I don't know what you know about womb vac, but it's like they open up your stomach. So he's just basically exposed. Liver and kidneys stopped functioning correctly. When a doctor did the examination on his liver while he was there, he said he had 20% liver death. And he said, I quote, maybe it was from, not getting enough platelets when he was up on the other floors for 9 days. What? When I asked this one doctor, what is going on with my dad? He said, quote, I don't know. It just seems like the wheels just kind of fell off. I beg your pardon? At this time, they had this nurse, this young lady. She would start to meet with me and my brothers, and kind of explain what was going on. Well, now her meetings turned into 15, 18 days in. What would your father want? And we're just like, what? What would your dad want? I said, he'd want to leave here. What are we even talking about? She said the next meeting, the doctors who performed that procedure that opened him up, they would meet with us as well, which was great because I had a ton of questions. 4 days later, when we were supposed to meet, all those doctors that were supposed to meet with us said they had prior obligations and they no-showed. Now my father has to go through dialysis. 20 days in, he's pretty much intubated and sedated all the time. So 21 days ago, he was upright, walking around, walking the dogs. Now he's intubated and sedated. A few days before that, we got our first positive culture that, yes, he had an infection. 23 days, we sit down with the head of infectious diseases, and he said, it turns out that 97-8% of the time that someone has an infection, we start getting them antibiotics. This is the 2% chance that the antibiotics we were giving your dad did nothing because he has C. diff in his blood. And the guy goes, and the problem is he probably got it in that stent. And so his white blood cells can't even get to it. 25 to 26 days in, now he's not even responding to command. 28, 29 days, another breathing episode, and we decide to put him on comfort measures only. September 1st, we went into the hospital and watched as they pulled all the breathing tubes out and let my father die. So my father entered the hospital around July 26th and never left, and died after a grueling 33, 34-day battle. In the entire time, we never got the answers we wanted. We understand that he eventually died of an infection due to an invasive procedure that they did that was unnecessary. And because my father was a veteran, he was insured. My father had $700 in the bank when he died. UPMC Mercy Hospital got $615,000 from my dad from April of 2019 to September of 2019. They were still sending me bills that were paid after his death. So that is why I started Justice for Charlie.